Welcome to the Real People, Real Business Show. My name is Stephanie Hayes, and I'm a business strategist who helps experienced business owners design asset-based business models that set them up for growth and exit. I love to speak with like-minded entrepreneurs to share their real stories and the gritty details on how they've navigated their own way through. On this show, you won't hear about the glamorized entrepreneurship journeys that you see online. You won't be told how to make six figures in 6 weeks. Instead, you can expect to hear real, vulnerable, and inspiring stories that you can relate to that have helped create the foundation for each of our guests' businesses. Today, I'm so excited to welcome Crystalynn Shelton. Crystalynn is a licensed CPA and Book's top 100 pro advisor, helping startups, small businesses, and million-dollar companies alike take control of their finances through accounting software training and consulting. Crystalynn's number crunching interest was sparked after taking a high school bookkeeping course. How you even got into the high school bookkeeping course, I want to hear that story. Where she was determined to become a CPA. For the last 20 years, she's done just that, leading accounting departments for Fortune 500 companies like Intuit, Texaco, and Paramount Pictures. In 2010, Crystalynn went on to found her own consulting business. Since then, she's gone on to publish Mastering QuickBooks, a 3-time Amazon bestseller, now in its 4th edition, coached more than 100 clients, all while serving as an adjunct instructor at the University of California, Los Angeles for the last 13 years, teaching bookkeeping and QuickBooks courses. Welcome to the show, Crystalynn, and thanks so much for taking the time to share your story today.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. I am thrilled to be here.
So I want to know, tell me the story. So first of all, how did you, as a teenager, even decide you wanted to take an accounting course?
Okay, great question. I had an aunt who I went to visit the previous summer, and she actually had some accounting books laying around and was talking about possibly going back to school to major in accounting. She was a nurse at the time, and I think she was kind of getting burnt out. And so when I went back to school for my junior year in high school, I found this bookkeeping class that was being offered as an elective. And so I just decided, what the heck, I'm going to check it out. And so the class was taught by a gentleman who owned his own CPA firm at the time. And I just loved everything that he basically had to say about owning his own firm. And then when we got into learning more about bookkeeping and accounting, I really just fell in love with numbers in that class. And mind you, prior to that, I hated math. I was terrible in, calculus and geometry and the math, that we had back in school. And so I would always make an A in everything. And then you would get down to math and it would be a B every time. But when I got to this class, I think what was really great is it wasn't like the pre-calculus and the trigonometry type math, right? It was your basic addition and subtraction. And it was different math. And I gravitated to it. And so, yeah, that's the story. And when I completed that course, I decided I wanted to be a CPA. And I pursued my accounting degree. I got that. And then 2 years after I graduated from college, I obtained my certification as a CPA. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I would say, there's a real difference in, we have this sort of perception, especially, as girls growing up, that math is hard. And
Yeah.
I know I definitely don't know, that was not where I excelled for sure. And I actually had a really hard time with it when I went to do my master's degree in business, and you had to do rudimentary math, and I just couldn't get it.
Yeah.
And as soon as I started doing the same math in the context of economics and accounting, I was like, yeah, this is fine. I totally get it in context. But that was the thing I learned about myself, is I can't think in the abstract. I have a hard time with abstract concepts. I want to know, what does this mean? And how is this rooted in something practical?
Exactly.
And bookkeeping, I actually really like accounting. To me, it was kind of fun.
Exactly.
And the way that the numbers, the way that it's almost like art, right? You think it's cut and dried, but actually once you really get into accounting, it's actually very creative thinking.
Yeah, it totally is. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
So you became a CPA, and I assume, were working for other companies for a while. Tell me about the transition to building your own business.
Yeah, so I worked in corporate for a while, and I would say during that time period, I probably averaged between 60 to 70-hour work weeks. About 8 years in, actually, I would say 10 years in to the corporate world, I started feeling like I was going to burn out. And so I started just looking for other opportunities. And in that, I also had to take on this new project at work. We were converting from our existing accounting software to a new one. And in doing that, I was tasked with training my staff on how to use the new accounting software. So what was cool is I created training materials, I delivered the training to my staff over a number of weeks. And at the end of that, I had fallen in love with teaching and training. And I was like, this is what I want to do. And so I decided it would be best for me to leave corporate and do it on a smaller scale with small business owners. I felt like that was kind of going to be a good niche to pursue. So I did some research, found out QuickBooks, was like the number one software for small business owners. So I got certified. I landed my first teaching position at UCLA. I had never taught anything other than the training at my job. But I was like, oh, they needed an instructor for QuickBooks. Yeah, I can do that. Newly certified and everything. I was just like, yeah, I'm going to do that. And so, 13 years later, I'm still teaching for them. And as you mentioned, I have my own business where I teach and train small business owners on how to manage their bookkeeping, but like many small business owners, this started as a side hustle, because I still needed that paycheck to pay my bills. And also it helped to fund my small business, right? Because you start incurring expenses and you don't necessarily have that income to match it in the beginning. And so my paycheck, part of it went to helping me, fund my business until I got to a point where I felt like I had enough clients to actually, go full time with it and leave my job. So, yeah.
Amazing. And so tell me a
Mhm.
little bit about how you went about finding clients.
So I actually was fortunate in that many of the clients that I had came from the classroom. They had come to take my course at UCLA and needed some one-on-one consulting with their specific businesses. And then also at the time, I was a consultant for the Small Business Development Center. And so lots of clients coming through there wanted to work with me as well. And so getting clients was easy back then because I was in a position where I was always meeting small business owners, either at UCLA or with the Small Business Development Center. So it's fairly easy.
I love that. It's a strategy that a lot of kind of small business owners or people sort of starting out don't really think about that, I'm often sort of raising for them. That is the partnership route, right? So
Mhm.
how can you attach yourself to another organization or another person who is also serving your customers in a different way or somewhere else on the life cycle that is going to be able to recommend you or refer you, or you work in collaboration with them and you have sort of this mutually beneficial. It's honestly one of the fastest ways to grow your business, right?
Absolutely. Yep,
Yeah,
for
I love
sure.
that. I love that. And how much do you think that your credibility from teaching helped?
Oh, a great deal. I would say actually the first thing that helped is being certified in QuickBooks.
Mm.
That certification helped. And then also the teaching as well, just, increased my credibility because once people see that you know what you're talking about, if they're sitting in the classroom, they're pretty much sold, especially if, if you're good at what you do. And I can say that I am like, that is my superpower, teaching people how to get complex, how to understand complex topics. I can do that in writing and I do that in my books as well as face to face when I'm teaching people. And that's, I've been told that over and over from my clients. And so now I'm like, yeah, you know what? You guys are right. Plus, I enjoy it, right? It doesn't feel like work. And that's what, my favorite part about it is that it's something that I don't dread. I look forward to meeting with clients or spending time writing a chapter or what have you. Yeah.
How did the book come about?
So the book, that was like out of left field. I mean, seriously, it was a DM in LinkedIn that I got from the publisher. And you know how it is when you get a DM from someone, you're like a little bit suspicious. Is this legitimate? You
Yeah.
know? And so I did my research, found out the publishing company actually existed. And then I dug a little bit further to see, okay, let me see if there are any authors that actually published a QuickBooks book. And there was. So I reached out to that author, and she was gracious enough to meet with me over Zoom for 30 minutes and
Oh,
answer
wow.
all my questions.
Wow.
I was sold because she was like, I wrote one book for them, and she was like, I'm telling you, the credibility, she said, that it gave me catapulted my business, where she said, I didn't even have time to write another book. She said, I've been too busy ever since. So she said, you absolutely have to do it. So it was just
Amazing.
amazing. It kind of fell in my lap. I mean, seriously, it just fell in my lap.
So
So it
how
was
did you
terrific.
choose, like, this is kind of always going over in my head because one day I think I'd like
Mhm,
to write a book too, but
mhm.
how did you arrive at the topic, at what you were going to focus on?
So they actually they told me what they wanted me to write about.
Uh-huh.
And so that made it easy. They had done some research on me over, social media, and looked over my bio and my background. And they were like, seems like you're very, well versed in QuickBooks. And we have a book on desktop. We'd love you to write the online book. And so they asked me to put an outline together of, if I were going to write a book, what would I want to include in it? That was the easy part because I teach all the time. And so it's like, yeah, I know exactly what I would put in my book. And so wrote the outline and wrote the book. And it was just crazy how the first three editions were Amazon bestsellers. Like within 6 to 8 weeks of the books being published, they were at the top of the list in that category of like accounting and bookkeeping books on Amazon, which is amazing. And so the fourth edition has been out for a few months now, and it's tracking to be number one as well. So I'm really, really excited.
I'm not surprised. It's sort of, again, it's one of the big realizations that I've made over the years working in business and helping
Mhm.
business owners is that the focus that you can have is always going to be an asset for you. I think a lot of people kind of get scared and they're like,
Mhm.
I have to like cast my nets wide, and I have to be able to, do all the things for all the people, or like, and catch everybody. But actually
Right.
it works to their detriment, right? And
Yeah, it does.
I always tell my kids, like, focus first, right? Start
Yeah,
with something really
exactly.
focused. And then maybe you can build it from there and find new opportunities. But I think, that's if I had to guess, I would say that's probably one of the things that's really worked well for you, is being able to
Mhm.
be sort of really focused and build a brand around something very specific.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have the book, I have my consulting sessions that I do, and then more recently, I've published an online course. And so it's all centered around helping small business owners manage their books. And for me, it's about just being able to scale. There's only so many people I can meet with in a day or in a week. And I really want to reach as many small business owners as I can. Right now, I've met with hundreds. I want to be able to help thousands. And the only way to do that, of course, is to have a course where anyone in the world can go online, take my course, and learn how to use QuickBooks and have access to me through that channel as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Mhm.
I imagine you started out as a service provider.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
When did you make that change from there's the service provider, like the one doing the work, to, and did you at any time think about building an agency, or,
Mhm.
what was the transition like to moving to being something a little bit more scalable?
I mean, I'm still in the service provider arena, I would say. I still have clients that I meet with weekly. And so I'm just now making that transition. Like my course is maybe just a few weeks old. So
Mhm.
I'm in the process of making that transition. I don't think I'll ever move 100% away from it because I actually enjoy this work. but I'll just be more, what's the word I want to use? Just
Selective.
selective. I mean, I'm selective, but I'll probably have to be more selective, more so selective in terms of just the type of clients that I want to work with and how much of my time that I want to spend doing that. But one of the things that I have started to do is to go and attend like conferences.
Mm.
So, for example, last week I was at a conference that I spoke at the end of next month. I'm scheduled to speak at another conference. So, I think that's another way to expose myself to other people and to just sort of reach out further, cast my net further, if you will, than I have been. So I'm excited. It's fun to do those
Yeah.
those type of events because you meet all types of people and just people I never would have met if I just stay here in my little office and meet with one-on-one with my clients.
Yeah, it's sort of the ever existing challenge that I think a lot of like business owners face, especially women, is how to get that sort of like in marketing. We have to have, both sides. We have to have the visibility side where we're actually finding new audiences and we're finding new people to find us. And then
Yeah,
once they kind of find you, then we need to nurture them and, have something for them to identify with. But it's the
exactly.
visibility side that a lot of people struggle with and don't want to
Mhm.
do. And
Right.
I think it sounds like you have found some channels that really work for you.
Yeah, I have because, one of the things that I'll share in 2010, I did leave corporate to start this business. But guess what? In 2013, I went back to corporate.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just say the main reason why I did that was because I spent too much time working in my business. And, I had the referrals at the time, which were easy and were coming through. But eventually, those dried up. And then I hadn't done anything in terms of marketing or networking to sort of keep that cycle going where I had new clients coming in. And so it was a hard lesson to learn. I avoided marketing and networking because I didn't like it. And, for whatever reason, thought if I just avoided it, it would go away. It didn't. It's kind of like my clients that come to me and they're like, yeah, I'm just going to let that bookkeeper do what they do. And I don't need to know what they're doing. That's not going to work. That's not a long-term solution, And so it's the same thing, except my issue is I'm not the marketer, but yeah, it was a hard lesson to learn. So this time around, I know better.
So what have you done differently? It doesn't sound like you're hating the visibility work that you're doing. I mean, I don't know, maybe you are,
Right.
but it sounds like you're pretty comfortable with it.
I'm comfortable with it in terms of just I have a positive attitude about it. And I don't necessarily like the rigor involved with getting prepared to go and speak at a conference. But once I get there, the interaction with people, the networking, the learning that takes place is like, that's my happy place. And so I know what the end result will be. So I do the things I don't like to do to get to that end result. But what I've also done, and a lot of small business owners, it takes them a while to get this, is I've hired some help for that marketing piece, right? Because I'm not the social media girl. I'm not, I'm not that versed in it. And so I have a marketing assistant. She does a fantastic job of, managing the content, coming up with great ideas. And I participate in that. So we meet weekly and talk about what we're going to be sharing out. Maybe there's a theme for a particular month. And then what are we going to be sharing out in that month to our subscribers and to get new subscribers? And so I participate in the process, but I don't have to do that work. And so that's what I like and had to realize you need help. And so as soon as I was able to afford to get help, I did. And that's what I recommend.
I'm glad that you say that. And, I used to sort of operationally run a VA company. And I think
Mhm.
a lot of the objection that came from potential, customers for the VAs was, I don't know what to ask them to do. And I don't know how
Mhm.
to onboard somebody. And I feel like I have to have everything perfect before I, hire anyone. And it sounds like you
Yeah.
kind of went, I identify the place where I have some pain.
Yes.
it doesn't come naturally. Did you find that, you hired somebody and they kind of ran with it, or did you have to give them a lot of instruction? Like, how did that go for you?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I actually had been reading this book last summer with my sister, and that book actually helped me get to the point where I realized I needed to hire someone. And I actually hired a virtual assistant and a marketing assistant at the same time. And one of the exercises that it says to go through is to write down everything you would have that person do, right? And that sort of feeds the actual job description that you come up with, right? And so just doing that process or going through that process was it was like a huge stress reliever. It was like I had already delegated all these duties to someone else who I hadn't even hired yet, but just putting it down on paper was amazing, because it's like step one, put it down on paper, and then you're like, okay, yes, I can actually hire someone to do all these things, which frees up how much of my time so I can do the things that need to be done to grow the
Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that process was very freeing. So the virtual assistant position, the first person I hired, she was amazing, but she only lasted 3 months. She was a teacher, and then she got called back, and she, had some personal issues and actually needed benefits, which I couldn't really afford at the time. Best hire ever, but she didn't last long. Then I hired someone else. She lasted 3 months. She had some personal issues. And so then I just decided, okay, the virtual assistant position, we'll let it go for now. Marketing assistant, first person I hired, amazing. She's been fantastic. We're just on the same page. But I think you just have to, number one, set expectations, very type A personality. So I know what I want in a person. I know what my expectations are. And I have no problem communicating that to people.
Right.
And then we have a regular weekly meeting, which I think is good, because that's the only way to stay connected with people, because she's virtual. And so it's good for us to meet weekly so that we understand or are on the same page about what needs to happen that particular week. And also, to give guidance or to answer any questions that person has. Yeah, email's great, but it's always great to have a one-on-one as well. And I learned that from being in corporate. I always had a one-on-one with my boss. And I love that time, because it was a time for me to, express any concerns or ask any questions. And so I found that that's worked really well. And so I just think, it's going to be hit or miss. It's never going to be perfect. I've gone through, the 2 virtual assistants, just decided, okay, we'll circle back to that position. In the meantime, this marketing assistant is fantastic.
Yeah. And I think that's okay. Like, that's a huge lesson, is that you can go through that process. And it's like the old adage, right? In corporate, is hire slowly, like fire fast, right?
Yes.
So if you, do put the time and effort into finding the right person,
Yeah.
and don't make it based on cost, because you will always get misaligned.
Exactly.
I have an amazing help with this podcast, for example. And, and I know she'll be listening to this when so hi, Shannon. But she and I have had this conversation before as well. Like, she's my dream person. And I know that I can use her in lots of different ways. But I think a lot of people have it in their heads that they need to hire a VA and it'll cost them $5 an hour. And I'm like, you're going to get $5 an hour,
right,
half the quality, right? And there is a place for people who are just kind of banging out rote work that you can pay $5 an hour for, and it's sort of like it doesn't require a lot of strategic thought or anything like that.
Right.
But invest the time and the resources in finding the right person for you, and it's going to be worth every penny you pay.
It is.
Stuck in this idea of cheap resources, right?
Right. And the other thing I would say too is, when you do find the right person, or when you do hire someone, you've got to invest the time to train them properly.
Mm.
Don't just, I mean, some things they can figure out on their own, but you've got to take some of your time as a business owner and meet with them. I just recently hired an accounting intern, and I am meeting with her probably every other day because I'm bringing her up to speed on how to interact with clients and my expectation when it comes to communicating with clients or managing client work. And so that's the only way they're going to get up to speed quickly and to do things the way you want them to do is you're going to have to invest some of your time to bring them up there. But then once you do, it's so worth it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm,
And like
mhm.
put that time as actually budget that time. Because this is
Yes,
what ends up happening is
yes.
we don't, and we don't treat it like it's actually a project and an investment in our business. And then we're frustrated because,
Mhm.
oh, I have to
Yeah,
spend all this time. This isn't worth it. No, you're gonna have to spend the time, right? You're gonna
yeah.
have to, make some time and effort and like answer questions and think through. And it's okay if the first little bit is just messy.
hmm It's
But
going to be messy.
yeah.
But at the end of the day, if you don't take the time up front, that you're going to spend time correcting that person's mistakes later on because you didn't take the time up front. I mean,
Right,
it's
and
just
the
that
open
simple.
communication, the permission to ask questions. I remember when
Yeah,
when Shannon started working with me, I'm like, "Look, here's all the stuff. Here's all the
right.
stuff. Here's" I don't know, I think my process was actually pretty good and, like, pretty well documented, but,
Yeah,
she came into it and she was like, "Okay." And I said, "Look, do your best, right? Do your
right.
best with this, make it your own, ask me questions, the first few like you're setting that expectation up front the first few episodes it's going to take a
Mhm.
while and we're like going to have questions and there's going to be things but as long as you're open to receiving the feedback it's not emotional
Yes,
it's not a value judgment it's just like hey just remember this or remember that or I have some weird little quirk about this and that sort of
right.
thing and then eventually now like I don't even sadly I don't hear from her that much because she just I love her and
Got
I
it.
would love to hear from her more but
Yeah.
Shannon, talk to me. But like she's just got it so dialed and she owned it. And that's what you're looking for is someone who can own their process, someone who and you're setting it up for them to have the permission to be able to do that. And that's going to pay off in spades for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think something that you
Mm.
said is key is just providing that feedback and then being able to receive that feedback and take the emotion out of it.
Yeah.
Because feedback works two ways. I actually, I want someone who's able to receive feedback, but I am also able to receive it as well.
Yeah.
If there's something that I'm doing that's not working for you, or, please, I tell my folks, speak freely because this isn't going to work if you don't feel like you can speak freely and I don't feel like I can speak freely, right? And I always make sure that the folks that work for me, they know you can be honest with me.
Now I imagine that it's, there's been a point at which you have thought about at least building out an agency.
hmm
And where have you sort of landed? Like what does growth sort of mean to you?
I'm still defining that. I have thought about building out an agency, but I worry about being able to duplicate what I'm able to accomplish with my clients, duplicate that method that I utilize to teach and train my clients. I've thought about having a certification program where I bring folks in, they go through some training and then, they're off to the races. It's still something that I think about occasionally. And so I'm just not sure if I want to go that route. Just to be honest with you, managing a lot of different people is a lot of work. I did it in corporate for years and years and years. And so I just have to be mindful that if I go that route, I'm probably going to have to hire someone to manage that team because that's something that doesn't excite me in terms of having to do it on a day to day. Does that make sense?
100%. And what I really love is that you're being very honest with yourself about what you do
Yeah.
and do not want, right? I think a lot of people fall into this trap of
hmm
seeing other people do it and
Yeah.
thinking, oh, well, I have a service-based industry. I should just, the only way to scale or grow is to hire a bunch of people to do this work for me. And that doesn't always have to be the answer.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. So I'm still, I'm still thinking about it.
Yeah, and so what's the future plans for the course and the digital products?
Yeah, so I've released the first course, and the plan is to also probably release future courses that are more challenging. So this is sort of like the basic training course, and then I plan to do, multiple levels of courses. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now. I enjoy that work. Producing the course is like so much fun. I really, really enjoyed it. It's a lot of work, but the end result is just amazing. And so my goal really is to get the course out there to the small business owners, as well as to people who are looking to enter the bookkeeping and accounting industry. 90% of small business owners use QuickBooks. And so I know my course can help folks get up to speed if they just want to get a job doing bookkeeping for someone. This course will prepare them for that. And so for me, just getting in front of the right audience that actually could get this course out to people who are looking to change careers or looking to get into this field. And so I love being a mentor. So I'm also, playing around with opportunities for doing that as well.
Well, I love that you've got some diversity in your customer groups, right? So you have
Hmm.
the actual service clients, and then you've got
Hmm.
this whole other group of people who are like, maybe this is the potential, career for me, a career choice.
Yes.
And how can you support them and keep going with building out your support for that group?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that part. I actually just started partnering with my alma mater, which is just 20 minutes away, and starting to hire accounting students who want to intern. I really enjoy sharing my knowledge of working in the field and the opportunities that are available. When I first started out, I did have an accounting intern back in 2010 that I hired, and she worked with me for 2 years before she graduated. And it was amazing. She wrote me this really sweet letter when she graduated and sent me this gift to thank me just for solidifying her decision to be an accountant. And so we still keep in touch on social media to this day. She always keeps me up to date on where she is and what she's doing. So I'm just like, oh my gosh, I love that.
Well, when I see somebody having that much passion about that kind of part of their business, that sounds to me like a great place to focus on your future growth.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
There's one question I ask everybody. This show is about sort of the real side of business and not
Mhm.
the celebrity stories that are unachievable and inaccessible. What's the difference between what we hear out there in the business world, in the online business world, and what's real about being a business owner? What's that difference?
A lot of people talk about having a balance, right, of personal and work. And unfortunately, I would have to say in the beginning, it's impossible. I mean, that's how I feel. I feel like it sounds nice, but it's just not reality. I just remember, when you're a small business owner, because you're wearing so many hats, it's impossible to put yourself on a clock, right? On an 8-hour clock. Oh, I'm going to work 8 hours. I'm going to work from this time to this time. That is just not realistic. It wasn't my experience. It hasn't been my experience. Even today, I try to at least turn off my computer no later than 6 o'clock, because usually that's the time my husband has dinner ready for us. And I try not to come back to my computer, but hey, there are those evenings where I get an email and it's like, yeah, you know what? I got to get back on. So I just think, and it's okay, right? Because what I look at it is it's not going to be forever, right? I have to do what I have to do to get this business to where I want to be. And then eventually I'll get to a point where I can have a balance. That doesn't mean I'm not taking care of myself, but it's just, I do things for self-care that are very important, but just don't put the pressure on yourself that you have to just work in your business these 8 hours or 5 hours or whatever other people say they do, because it doesn't make sense. If you have a big goal for your business, the only way you're going to reach it is you're going to have to put the work in. It's not going to happen unless you make it happen.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of like becoming a parent and the Pinterest moms, and
Mhm.
we have a national pastime about making women and moms feel inadequate no matter what they do. And I think there's all this talk and all of this you know ultimate thing you're sort of supposed to be striving towards with this inner
Mhm.
peace and this balance. And I'm like, you're absolutely right. The first couple of years in business are just a mess, right? And
Yeah.
I don't advocate for burning yourself out. I don't advocate for,
Right.
like, no one's going to die if you don't do this thing today. But it is going
Right.
to be messy, and it's okay that it's messy, and you're figuring things out, and it's not always going to be perfect. And like the more we try to fit into these sort of picture perfect impressions of someone else's business, the harder it gets for us, right? So you never
Yeah.
really arrive.
Exactly.
You're just in constant motion, and that's okay.
Yep. Absolutely.
All right. Awesome. Can
Mhm.
you, we're coming up to the end of the show. Can you tell the listeners where they can find you?
Yes. So I actually have a couple of gifts for your audience today. If
Oh,
they go to crystallynshelton.com/podcast, there are 2 checklists that they can download for free. The first one is your first 7 days in QuickBooks. So it's a checklist that actually coincides with my book, Mastering QuickBooks 2023, to sort of help guide you on what to do that first week you're in the QuickBooks software. And then the other checklist is for your seasoned listeners who maybe they have QuickBooks or they have another accounting software that's working great for them, but it's called your closing the books checklist. So all the things that you should consider and make sure are done before you hand your books over to your tax preparer so they can prepare your tax return. And so, yeah, both of those are available on that page for download for free, as well as I offer a free 20-minute consult for anyone who needs some guidance on what to do or they're not sure what software they could use for their business. So my specialty is QuickBooks, but I do work with other software products, especially if QuickBooks is just not the right fit for a small business. So
and sometimes it's not, right? I think a
yeah,
lot of people, they're
absolutely.
little personal brands, and they're like, I need an accounting software. I'm like, maybe you don't, right?
Hmm.
Maybe what you
Right.
really need is invoicing or something like that. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So that conversation really helps me to figure out what they really need, where the pain points really are, so that we can create the right path for them for sure.
And I think it's a huge relief for them to hear that too, that they don't need to
Mhm.
take on like a huge exercise, or maybe it's going to be okay.
Yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. I think that's so generous of you. And we'll put all of the links inside the show notes so that everybody can find your free gift and find you and, reach out, because I know this is a point of pain for quite a number of people, and they get kind of like, numbers. And it's not as scary as it sounds. And
That's right.
Crystalynn is here to kind of walk you through it. So thank you so much for that. We're going to wrap
Absolutely.
up. I'm
Yeah.
so happy that we had the opportunity to chat with Crystalynn today to hear more about how her business came to be, her experiences along the way, and what the future of the business entails. And thanks again for tuning into this episode of the Real People, Real Business Show, where we get the real entrepreneurial stories and journeys that you can relate to. The show notes, resources, and links from this episode are available on my website and social media platforms. And if you've enjoyed today's content, I would love for you to give us a review on whatever platform you're on to help us share these genuine stories with an even bigger audience. Until next time, keep building, keep dreaming, and keep being real.